today's Communiqué. So excited to have Drs. Khiela Holmes and Dr. Tiffany Haynes with us discussing the AABP Town Hall series. We know that you guys have done a couple of series in the past, and this is going to be a continuation of that. And so thank you guys for taking some time out of your busy schedule to join us to talk about the Town Hall series.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
So before we jump into the next series, I want to just kind of reintroduce AABP and also just reintroduce to our audience um, who you guys are, especially for people who are just now tuning in to the series and may not know or may not be familiar with you, Dr. Holmes and Dr. Haynes. Let's start with Dr. Haynes. Just tell us a little bit about you and maybe your specialty or your area of practice.
I'm Tiffany Haynes. I'm a clinical psychologist by training. But right now I work at the College of Public Health, and I focus on doing research, particularly about how we can improve mental health services and reduce stigma among populations like rural areas and with African Americans. But I'm a native Arkansan, and I'm really passionate about improving mental health here in our state.
All right, Dr. Holmes.
Hi, hello. Thanks again for having us, Kenya. Yes, my name is Khiela Holmes, and I am a clinical psychologist as well, specializing in youth and families. So I spend part of my time working at Arkansas Families First, where I do therapy and also do a little bit of psychological testing. And I spend the other half of my time working with educators and administrators around creating trauma-informed schools, particularly in early childhood education settings.
Wow, okay. All right. Well, thank you guys both for the wonderful work, the much needed work that you all do in the field. Let's just talk briefly about AABP and what the mission is of the organization. Who wants to take that one?
Well, I'm happy to kind of share. So, the Arkansas Association of Black Psychology Professionals was started in 2010. And so, our mission is to primarily engage in community education activities, professional development, networking, and other activities that would promote the emotional wellness of the Black community, and then also Black psychology professionals.
All right.
Right.
So, for the month of March, focusing on educators, for the month of April, we're going to be focusing on spirituality um, and coping during this pandemic. We know that spirituality um, runs deep for a lot of people, and it is very important in the lives of people. When we're talking about spirituality, that's not necessarily talking about religion, is it? Or how would you define spirituality?
For me, spirituality is really that feeling of connection to a higher being, someone that is greater than you. And when we talk about religion, we're really talking about those rules and traditions that we have with particular religious traditions, whether it be Christian, Islam, or those things like that. So spirituality is the connection, and then the religion is kind of the way it plays out sometimes.
Yeah. And with this pandemic, for sure, I know people just have questions like, why is this happening? And so, having to focus on your spirituality to kind of help connect you to something greater for understanding, I think is very important at this particular time. And so, why focus on spirituality specifically during this pandemic? Why did the group decide to focus on spirituality?
I think you really hit it on the head when you said that people need something to connect to in this time. And so we've talked about how uncertain this is. You know, some of us thought this was going to be over last summer, and now we're almost a year in, and we have vaccines, but we don't. We know there's some uncertainty around that, and we're getting different dates about when we can go back to pre-COVID life. So there's just a lot of uncertainty and a lot of things that we don't control. So for people who are used to controlling things. And most of us as human beings, we like to have control and we like to know what's going to happen. And we are in a situation where we have lost a lot of control and a lot of ability to know what's going to come up. And when those happen, we often grab onto those things that are higher than ourselves to help us understand, to help us cope, to soothe and relax and refresh us. And so we thought it was important for us to just reiterate how important that is for us in this particular area, but also just kind of give some more tips about how we can use that spirituality to best cope.
Right. And if I could just like interject, like I totally agree with Dr. Haynes. And if I could, I think the other piece that we talked about as well and reflected on is particularly for the Black community, what we know is that historically, spirituality, religiosity, the Black church, I mean, all of those things, and again, those are different, those are not the exact same, but spirituality is something that's been a part of our history, our culture, and what we've relied on for strength, for hope, for all of what we need for a very long time. So I think we know that spirituality may look different and mean something different. It's not the exact same for every Black person. We know that, but we know that just the general concept of spirituality is something that's been critical for the Black community. So we wanted to pull on that and nurture that and just kind of give voice to that in our series as well.
I love that. And I know that people are seeking answers and seeking some tips and some tools to help them through this process, because let's just face it, like you said, a lot of people thought that this would be over in a couple of months. And here we are a year into it, almost a year into it. And there's not really an end in sight per se. And so for people who are trying their best to lean on that spirituality and are running up against some challenges, what one or two tips would you have for them to make sure they're connected with that spirituality to help them get through this difficult time that we're going through?
So I guess what I would kind of say again, like Dr. Haynes mentioned it, that it might be different, and you mentioned it too, Kenya. It could look different depending on what people's spiritual or / religious practices are. Though those are two different things, but whatever that means for that person, whatever that looks like, then they would kind of have to tailor it to them. But to lean on the spirituality side, more of that connection, that relationship, I would just say, I heard a man of God say one time, he said, time alone with God alone. So for me, that's what I would say. Whatever that is, whatever that looks like, that higher power, if for that person that means worship, even if it's worship through music, then do that. If it means time in nature, where they're just connecting with a higher power, the transcendent God, our creator, through his creation, being in nature, whatever that looks like. If it is prayer or just meditation, where it's kind of focusing on goodness, focusing on just things beyond them, just having time where it's just really focused, quiet time, quiet in their mind and in their bodies, quiet time. But you notice all the things that I'm saying are things that where it's almost like we're turning down the busyness and the loudness of our life to really connect in some way, in whatever way for them facilitates connection. With me, it's music and dance. That's what I would do to facilitate my connection with the higher power, our creator God. So whatever it facilitates that for that person, I would encourage them to do regularly, daily. If they need to do it in the morning, do it in the morning, regularly, make an intention, set an intention to do it.
And have you found in your practice that you have encountered those of different faiths who have kind of handled their spirituality as it relates to the pandemic differently? And if so, what has been kind of the contrast?
Well, since I can speak from, I don't know, Tiffany, you may have thoughts too, Dr. Haynes. We are clearly in this area, it's heavily Christian. I'm not saying everybody is Christian, but it's definitely heavily Christian. So it's hard for me to kind of have a range in terms of what different people do. But it kind of can look different. So in kind of those different pieces that I mentioned, like some people may really rely on prayer, Bible study, and teaching. That may really be what they do. Like if it's really Christian oriented, it may be, sermons, music, things that, in the Bible. And then other people, it may be something that has more of a spiritual kind of feel to where it's not connected to a faith tradition. It's not connected to a holy book necessarily, but it is a time of reflection and meditation. But I think the thing that's similar is that whatever it is, it gives them a greater sense of inner peace. It gives them a greater sense of hope, of inner strength, of maybe, like you said earlier, wisdom and understanding and revelation, that it gives them that ability to keep on keeping on, kind of thing. Yeah.
To keep on keeping on during this pandemic for sure.
Right.
And so, with the town hall meeting that's going to be centered around spirituality, will you guys be leading that particular town hall? Or will you have a guest? How is that town hall going to work?
We're gonna have some guests.
Okay.
I think that it's always good to make sure that we are, exposing people to other ways of experiencing the spirituality as a coping mechanism. And so we have some exciting people joining us. I don't have the names ever. It's always going to be Kyla that has that like specifics. But I'm actually very excited to hear about. I wanted to be a part of the town hall just to learn and hear how other people are using their spirituality, because I, like Kyla, use music, but I'm just interested in seeing how other people do it and how I can incorporate some of that into my day too. So it won't be us. We'll be there, but we'll be learning with everyone else.
Yeah. Absolutely. So exactly like Dr. Haynes said, we did want to have people that could hopefully provide different perspectives. So as it stands now on April 5th, so this will be the first Monday in April at 6:30. But Dr. Pat Griffin will be the moderator for that particular panel. We'll have Reverend Kathy Finley. I think I'm pronouncing her name right. She's a minister and a former pastor. Dr. Annette Slater, who's a psychiatrist and also tightly involved within the faith community, and Dr. Harold Betton, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He's a pastor and a physician. So we hope to have people who have that blend, who they have an understanding of things related to emotional wellness, and then they also can provide that spiritual lens as well. So I'm right there with Dr. Haynes. I look forward to being an attendee there. But then I'll just to listen to what people have to share.
Yeah, because it will be interesting to see and kind of learn from other people on how they are using their spirituality to cope. There may be some tips or tools that they're doing that one could incorporate into their daily walk. So yeah, definitely looking forward to that one. Right, and I think you mentioned that if someone is looking for a professional or to get connected with some services, they can reach out to you all on Facebook, and you can provide a referral or someone to connect with. Is that the case?
Yeah, so we are doing our best to develop a directory of Black mental health professionals in the state. So the mental health professionals would include social workers, licensed professional counselors, licensed professional examiners, psychologists, psychiatrists, but Black mental health professionals, we are continuing to update that on a regular basis. So absolutely, if they were looking for a provider, we would do our best, so they could send us a message at the Arkansas Association of Black Psychology Professionals Facebook page, and we would do our best to send them a referral. Of course, we don't say for sure, because we don't go through and look up all of the information about each person. But we will provide them with names and resources that we hope can give them a good start.
Perfect. So thank you guys once again for joining us, and that's a wrap.
Thank you so much for having me.